in Conquest, where you have to be able to be flexible, adapt to the metagame, get reads on what your opponents are doing, as we are seeing right now with this current like Bomb Warrior versus Anti-Bomb Warrior metagame that we are stuck in. You cannot be predictable, you cannot get targeted in Conquest.
Yeah, and that's something that Xananan was struggling with yesterday. Actually, I was watching him play testing. Like, we know he's great with Priest. He's played Priest solidly for 3 months. But then he picked up Paladin. He's like, "What? I have to play these 10 fingers quickly? I wouldn't have think about my turn." But unlucky, you have to play your 37 Libram and your 10 fingers quickly. So yeah, you can't just be a one-hit wonder really well in Hearthstone.
Dear Malfurion.
Ooh, Rivius looking like he's switched up the camera positioning. Maybe that was what was wrong with the GM season. New lease on life now as we get to see him from a completely different angle.
I feel like we've had like 2 rounds here of just brutal matchups. Like Kallax Dead Draw and Rivius Give Please, like all massively in contention for their relative regions promotions.
Yes, you could largely like describe this as kind of the APAC equivalent of the Europe matchup that we had between Kallax and Deaddraw, right? I completely agree. But already you start to see some of this slightly weird Rivius tech coming into play here. Mindrender Alucia, sorry, usually just a card that you see in the Highlander version of Priest, whereas Rivius playing it here in the 2 of Dragon Priest, finding room for a lot of individual tech cards.
Yeah, he's not scared to look at a card and say, this is a good card, I'm going to find a way to play it. Throws synergy a little bit out of the window in favour of just better cards, I think, is one of his main wackinesses.
Yeah, better cards, but also like just hard targeting, right? I think is something that he has really thrown in there. We've seen, I think, one of the most inspired lineups that I've seen in recent times. It was one of the easiest picks to win a tournament I've ever made in my life. Was Rivius during a playoffs, where he just brought standard decks and just put Mechathune in all of them, and it just beat every deck in the field. Like it was incredible. And like I looked at his list and went, yeah, this wins. Like he's got this read right. But sometimes he trusts those reads and they're wrong, and that's where he can get into trouble in a lot of situations.
But that's why we need him back in GM. We need those players who are willing to make a read, and sometimes you're wrong, oh no, what a shame. Because when you're right, oh my goodness, it's so worth it to watch.
But things have developed quite quickly here, and Rivius has the curve you're really looking for, which is big minions early against Druid. And having double Draconic Studies, essentially, you are ramping as Priest, and you could argue here that Rivius has hit the ramp and Give Please has not, which means that Rivius is just going to be dropping a 4/9 on turn 3. This is very much giving the Druid a taste of their own medicine.
Yeah, just thresh you into that and see what happens. I tell you what, it doesn't get rid of it very well. Interesting that he was willing to use the coin there because he has such a good next couple of turns anyway mapped out, so this is just the best way to apply the pressure, even though it looks like it might have been better to go 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, I think just huge minion now. He can still play a big minion on curve next turn, or activate this Mage Scribe if he really wants to get greedy about it. So his curve still works this way, right? He still plays a big minion on 4 and 5. It's just this way he plays the largest minion first for maximum pressure as quickly as possible. And I think, believe it or not, like in this matchup, you are the aggro as Priest. That is your job. If it goes to the hyper late game, you're going to lose. So you do actually have to develop big threats in the mid game and push damage.
I think you're the aggro as Priest in nearly every matchup. The more I played it, the more I realised that, okay, against Demon Hunter you quite often run them out of cards, but you do it by being aggressive and making them waste their cards. I just found that you were almost never the control deck.
Priest is just old school mid-range Druid, right? Like this is just Innovate Yeti. That's essentially what Priest is able to do. They just play these big mid-range threats as early as possible. The difference is that they then rely on like card generation and resource hoarding as opposed to Force of Nature, Savage Roar, end the game.
And interestingly, he isn't going for the full curve. He is going for stuff.
Stuff indeed, and that is a Grave Rune coming down on a 4/9 potentially next turn if he does want to go for that, which will make that minion completely unremovable. Personally, I think I would have just kept playing my minions there in Rivius's position. I don't think losing access to this spell burst is really something you have to worry about. I don't think this 4/9 is dying anytime soon.
Yeah, that's definitely fair, but maybe feeling he wanted more options. But we can see, I mean, we have the luxury of seeing that Give Please, he's going to get a nice Mount Seller turn, but that's it. He's out. He's done when that's over with. It is going to be one crazy Mount Seller turn, though, when he's ready for it.
It is, yeah.
Grave Rune. It warms my heart to hear you saying that Grave Rune's being played in a good situation, because I know that you normally feel the card is bait.
Wait, what? Oh, in the Priest Mirror, yes. And even then, last meta's Priest Mirror. This is a conversation we had months ago, Lorenzo.
I know.
Come on,
things
change.
Use the truth against you in unusual situations.
Yeah.
I wasn't lying. Okay. Oh, give please. What do you want to do with this? I'm struggling to see why going all in isn't good here.
By nature of going all in, like, you need to make sure that push is winning, because you don't do anything afterwards, right? Like, you're not drawing cards, you're not refilling your hand, you're just making one board and saying go. Which, at that point, if Rivius is able to compete with it, which is very difficult for him to do, then you do have to think about fighting back, how you're going to fight back from there. Because even with this Grave Rune in play, even this Broom coming down at the end isn't necessarily a clean clear of the board, which means Rivius is going to have a lot of options to be able to fight back.
Yeah, this is the last chance he's going to get to do it before Soul Mirror, though. You don't know what you're going to roll, so I feel like he's almost forced into this situation.
Completely agree.
New Broom sweeps clean anyway. He'll be fine. What could go wrong?
Yeah, turns out that these rush minions are actually pretty inefficient right now. That's more like it.
Yeah. And that's really put the pressure on Rivius. Because the Soul Mirror is just going to do almost nothing against this. He's got to set it up really nicely.
He does.
And he's scared. Like, he thinks that next turn might be something masterful for Give Please. We can see it's Crystal Power you go. But...
I mean, he does know that there's a ton of overload for Give Please, regardless. So he knows that there can't be anything particularly powerful coming down on the following turn. So he knows he's not going to get survivaled. He knows he's not going to get overflowed. So he doesn't have to worry too much about the situation, but the size of the board being built up here is pretty disgusting.
Yeah, when I first picked up this matchup as Priest, I was surprised that the Druid had any fight at all, but really, if the Priest misses a step, and he hasn't missed a step, but, oh wow, the Druid can just do you, and that's what it's doing right now.
Oh, I've missed your casting, Lorenzo.
It's been a while, Sotul. It's been a while.
The Priest can just do you.
Am I fired yet? No, I've made it through 10 minutes. Okay, that's a good start.
Yeah. Crystal Powder Heal is the decision I like here, because I think Give Please smells a rat, right? He knows there's a Soul Mirror in his future, so he needs to do everything he can to be able to play around that. And healing up his exotic Mount Seller is chief principle amongst that.
Yeah, holding on to the broomsticks for a better occasion. They're going to get buffed by the survival at some point, or they're going to be used with a buff of survival. So
yeah,
not being overly greedy, I called it all in, but actually he's managed to find a way to make this pretty... I want to call it a bad hand that only does one thing. It's not that bad because it does a good thing. But he's managed to make it into sort of a hand and a half rather than just one all-in shot. Just a little bit of a nod to if he draws something half decent like an overflow in the next 2 or 3 turns, he will actually have a second part to this plan.
I can't imagine this is any other turn apart from Soul Mirror, right? I don't see the options.
I wonder.
It feels so bad, but yeah. I mean, I'm with you. I understand the point. It's just Soul Mirror looks so sad. You daren't hold on one more turn because the clue that survival is in hand is just too powerful right now.
Yeah, you just see a lot of nothing going on, right? There's not been any like vanilla beasts played down during turns where they had like 5 mana, for example. So there's a lot of cards you're ruling out from being in the hand with the way this game has been played out so far. And if Survival of the Fittest were to happen, Rivius kind of has the dream counter with the Murozond of his own, which is one of the scariest things in the Priest matchup for sure. Is when you survival without like an overwhelming advantage. You know, you survival of the fittest, but you don't also put like 20 damage on board, and then the Priest is able to mirrors onto you straight back, which is exactly the spot we have right here.
Yeah, and it's actually looking quite tough for Give Please here. I mean, he has drawn terribly. Second Broomstick, second Mount Seller. I didn't even know second Mount Seller was still a thing, if I'm honest. I think a lot of decks went down to 1 in general.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think you see any number, 0, 1, and 2 in different builds of the deck, but I do think 1 is probably the most common overall.
It's actually something about this meta that I have enjoyed. There's been a lot of things in the meta that, like, it's been quite stagnant in terms of archetypes, but in terms of how to build those archetypes, the meta's never really settled down. Every deck, apart from maybe Demon Hunter, is just built differently depending who builds it.
Right.
And then there's Demon Hunter, which is just 29.5 cards the same every single time.
So now Rivius still has 2 more 4/9s remaining in this Onyx Mage Scribe, remember.
Yeah, that's
Master
a
Spell
lot
is a surprisingly playable card in the Druid matchup, just because of how threatening Survival of the Fittest can be. He does end up going for it. He was looking for answers there primarily, I would imagine, just something that addresses the board state, which he does not have right now. Does have the option to go fishing with the Spell Burst, but doesn't really have the hand space to be doing that right now, which is kind of awkward.
Yeah, and he's at the point now where he can start, last turn probably, he can start thinking about winning the game. He's just got the overwhelming card advantage, which isn't that easy to get in Hearthstone right now. Everybody always has cards, lots of them. But when you get to this place as Priest now, you just got to start metering out your resources so you don't get blown away. You should be okay.
Rivius actually finding it humanly impossible to get cards out of his hand, quite to the contrary of what you're saying. Like, he wants space in his hand for these kind of Onyx Mage Scribe value to be able to come down, but Overflow is absolutely the draw that Give Please needed, and in fact needed for this entire game up until this point, to be quite honest, but
ignore everything I just said about
drawn
cards
off it.
in hand. He's got loads of them everywhere. There's cards. He's back.
Yeah, none of them particularly impressive on this turn, though.
I wonder.
No, but he should be okay going into next turn. Like, one of the problems Priest has is why the games take so long, is that converting its dominant positions into wins takes a while. All of its cards cost a lot. So even if you're winning as Priest, you might still spend 20 minutes proving it.
So Give Please can take an Iron Bark here just to have the clean 9 damage onto one of these Onyx Mage Scribes if he would like to. It does look like that's what he's going to do. He's just going to cycle one of these Overgrowths now. Nothing else really particularly efficient to do with his mana, so I do kind of like this decision. Holds on to the excess mana just in case Ysera is the top deck next turn, I guess.
Now Rivius needs to just make a plan. This is the turn where he knows what he's up against pretty much for the rest of the game now. He needs to decide whether he wants to empty his hand and like just get this infinite value going on, or if he wants to go with tempo and actually get some stuff on the board. The trouble is he's probably facing a Guardian Animal soon, so putting stuff on the board might just get threshered, so it might just be a waste.
Imagine being able to empty your hand, Lorinda. Like, imagine that actually being an option when you're playing Priest. It's not possible.
It is actually one of the traps when you get a Sethek down early. If you're not careful, you try too hard to get max value with it, rather than just accepting, okay, I'm at 9 cards, this will do now. Like, sometimes you go for full Lyra and you end up just getting a handful of 1-drops, and your next draw is actually a good card you could have used in Hearthstone.
And honestly, this situation right now is why I really don't like Mindrender Elucia in this version of the deck, because you play the whole game with 10 cards in your hand.
Right.
Like, at what point are you ever going to be able to Mindrender?
Trying to work out why that's not in the middle.
Because Rivius made a mistake that turn. That's why it's not in the middle.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm not used to being awake at the first round after 2 months. Maybe I should have breaks more often. Cool. It's been proved to be quite a nasty one as well. It's given the full health on the Mount Seller. Which is quite a big deal because he hasn't actually got a trivial way to remove that 6/5 right now.
Nope. has been struggling with the Mount Sellers just as minions, really, since the beginning of the game. And obviously, the beginning of the game being Druid can play a 7-drop. Yes, I did not misspeak. He just hasn't been able to deal with it, right? Like, since the 2-turn setup where Give Please quite rightly crystal powered the minion to heal, since that point, there has just been a Mount Seller on the board. Like, yes, he was able to master spell them, so they haven't just completely run away with the game. But just that big minion, just persisting, just keeping board control for Give Please, has kept Rivius in trouble for most of this game, honestly.
Yeah, and this is what I was talking about earlier about all the cards costing so much. If you just dump this lot on the table, you'd be fine right now. But your Spellkins have lost a lot of value because you're never going to get to actually keep the cards they draw. Obviously, Murazond, I think Give Please has done a good job of not just walking into a Murazond throughout the whole game. And everything else doesn't do anything apart from mini occupation of the board.
Wave of Apathy does cut into this board quite significantly.
Yeah, just
might be the difference of being able to survive a Survival of the Fittest. By which I mean, I don't like Survival of the Fittest is not lethal straight up either way, but having Survival dropped on this board might mean that he can actually do something next turn just to set up a counter-offensive if Survival of the Fittest came down.
Yeah, he needs to play the game over 2 turns. He needs to do that a lot with Priest, as I keep mentioning, because of the casting costs. So just giving himself a chance to get on the board, but of course that's just been taken away from him from Guardian Animals number 2 with Animals still living in the deck.
This is such a weird Druid game, by the way, with no ramp early, and then I think with like 8 cards left in his deck, he still managed to get full double Guardian Animals value, and one of his last 3 cards is Ysera Unleashed.
Yeah, it's the Ysera thing that's making this so strange. He's winning this with just this shambolic set of mid-range minions, somehow.
Yes.
And some of that goes back to the Soul Mirror that Rivius used. If he had a Soul Mirror now, I'm not saying he would be alive now if he hadn't used it, but not having a Soul Mirror is really hurting him, like, precisely now.
Yes. But yes, I also agree he would very emphatically be dead by now if he had not have used that Soul Mirror. I don't think he had any other possibility on that turn.
It killed 2 2/2s.
Yes, it also made him a 4-1 Teacher's Pet and a 6-5 taunt.
Yeah, details, Sottle. You're always about the details.
Yeah.
Alright, I'm going to draw your Ysera and win the game. That's the plan I've got now.
Nope, doesn't work like that.
No. But I'm trying. Yeah, there's no plan.
Just desperately trying to use these cards to some decent effect here. The problem is, even if he were to do anything particularly powerful this turn, he's just handed a Murazond over to his opponent. So it's hard to imagine a situation where this works out particularly well for Rivius.
Yeah, I think that was well, I've got nothing better to do. Let's have a look and see if there's any way I can play the Ysera that Give Please has forgotten to play.
Yeah.
Because you never know unless you try. Now he knows. And he can get on with game number 2 if he really wants to. I guess it's not quite that bad, but it's pretty grim.
What?
Like, you can still generate cards to help him, I guess. Maybe he holds on long enough that... I'm trying to find any way out of this that isn't existing.
I love this. He knows his remaining deck, that from his perspective, that is a 50-50 of either being Ysera or Omu, depending on which of the 2 of them are left in the deck, because he knows that those 2 minions were both in there. So either way, that's a 4-mana 4/12 or a 0-mana 5/4. So Mind Games absolutely was the premium pick there, I think, out of that hand.
Yeah, good. And Rivius actually was shocked when he saw that, because I think the implication was, I should have thought of that myself. I haven't seen those 2 cards that would probably have been played by now.
Wait. You don't want to end on the Murazond here? Was there messy stuff from the Murazond that he doesn't want to go off in this situation?
Let me think.
Okay.
I mean, this looks fine, right?
It does. I agree.
In fact, if Rivius Murazonds doesn't he just lose to being hit for 20 damage?
Yes. It does very much appear that way.
In fact, more than it's probably 40 damage actually. Yeah,
Yep.
okay. So that's Murazond ruled out, which is kind of a nice way of doing it actually.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder.
Rivius gonna search this hand for an answer. He does get himself a Sandhoof Waterbearer this way, but he also knows that there is a Survival of the Fittest in his opponent's hand. So he goes to 26. He does now get to Shadow of Death one of the minions, but he is also going to take the damage from the Raised Dead as well.
Yeah.
A simple spell should do.
And now the Shadow of Death will refresh the crystals from the Omu. But is there anything more that Rivius can do to get out of this situation?
Draw some card. That's always a sign that somebody says no to the question you just asked. Is that
Pyro?
enough? No, he hasn't got any wand spells. Hasn't got enough. Or has
Wave! Wait a minute!
Wow.
Nope. Still not good enough. Survival is... Oh no, the Claw! The Claw's 22! Wait a minute, Neil!
We're looking at 21, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just check we're on the same page here. And that's if you want to draw some cards in your 0-card deck.
Which I'm pretty sure he does not want to do.
Doesn't seem ideal.
I have to go back now to asking the question about the Murazond. Like, was that not the card you need to deny from your opponent, especially when you know you were playing an Omu there?
Well, strangely enough, maybe the mind games was incorrect playing the Omu. Maybe you didn't want that to be even a minuscule option. Because I think he was fine without that. You can't play Murazond and refresh your crystals if there's no Omu on the board.
Sure.
Well, that's going a million
But
layers deep. I'm not saying he should necessarily have seen all that coming, but...
Yes. But I think that decision was fine because he doesn't necessarily know which of the two minions he's getting off his mind games. The problem was that then he didn't deny his opponent the Murazond.
Right. Okay. I mean, it's still looking reasonable, but now it's actually just a bit awkward.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what makes Priest, I think, personally, is probably the best deck right now, like, on a power level rating, not necessarily on a meta rating. It just won't die. You just can't kill it easily. You have to really work to finish it.
Yeah, I mean, Wave of Apathy is certainly a large part of that. We saw that coming into play there again at the end of the game for Rivius. Where, you know, Wave of Apathy by itself is a powerful enough card, but there's also that evocation factor where, you know, nerfing it to 2 mana would not necessarily just be a straight up nerf in terms of immediate power level, but it just means that you don't get 50 of them over the course of a game, which certainly can happen now when playing Priest.
The other issue is, though, that Priest only has 8 1-drops, at least Mage has like 2,000 or something.
Wait.
So...
Scarab Shadow Word Ruin? Oh my god, okay. If that had happened, oh my god.
Sottle was ready.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've only got the 8 1-drops, and even the worst one, which is probably Radiance, like, it just keeps you alive. Lets you do it again the next turn, and again, and yeah. If you're going to lose, this is kind of the only way. It's just get hit repeatedly by huge minions, and Give Please has tempoed this really well throughout the whole game. Especially given the hand he had, to just keep that threat level high.
And the Holy Smite is significantly less powerful than the Wave of Apathy for Rivius, so despite a very, very noble effort indeed, Rivius is not going to be able to get over the line. Big question marks about that end game play for Give Please with the sequencing on the Elucia turns. Obviously, Elucia turns get incredibly confusing for everyone involved, and there's always generally a bone of contention in any line that comes up there, but immediately I felt like the Murazond was the one card that did need to be denied from the opponent, especially since the mind games still ended up being punishing because of the way the draw steps work under Elucia conditions. So yeah, really, really complicated game towards the end there, with Rivius even having some potential to fish for later outs at the end. So
yeah, you called it at the time. I'd missed that he was going to get the extra 10 mana, and that did let the Priest show you why Priest is so good, but also show you why, you know, Druid still exists in this metagame somehow. The nerf to Guardian Animals has made a difference, but it's just meant you've got to play better.
Yeah, and I mean, that was kind of the dream start as well from the Priest in that position, which, you know, even though it wasn't able to get over the line, like, you know, it's about what you want to be doing against Druid. We just get a 4-9 on turn 3 and just able to snowball off that. Again, I also wonder about what would have happened from Rivius' position if he just played more aggressively with minions as opposed to, you know, trying to activate the spell burst, landing the Grave Rune, which wasn't more immediate power. He could have just played a big minion on every turn going through that position. But here we are. That is the past. This is the present. And the present, Neil, is apparently Libram Paladin for some reason.
I thought you were going to say the present is apparently Ironbeak Owl at 3 mana.
Yes.
That's definitely something from 2020. Ironbeak Owl straight up in your deck.
It's something from 2018, 2017 maybe even. I'm not sure if I can pinpoint the
And
year,
it
but
was
Rivius has history with this card, exactly. One of the first instances of, Rivius is a bit of a weird deck builder, is when he was running, was it Prince Taldaram and Ironbeak Owl in the same deck, even though the latter deactivated the former, and ended up getting all the way to the finals of, ACT Bangkok? I
Yeah, so
believe?
2018 that would be,
Yeah.
I will fight.
Yeah, that was a big deal. Everyone was saying, like, who's this idiot? Well, this idiot's done rather well since then. Like, people on Twitter say, why are these people allowed to play and all that sort of stuff? Well, the people on Twitter generally aren't allowed to play, but the people who are playing Grandmasters and qualifying, therefore, seem to be. And he's done a good job of this. Like we said at the start, he's done a good job of being a bit strange.
Yes, indeed. And this is the matchup that he will certainly be looking out for here with the Libram Paladin. We have very limited stats on this in Grandmasters. It really didn't happen often enough to really be relevant, but it's actually over our incredibly tiny sample size, showing to be Demon Hunter favored so far. So the strategy of bringing Libram Paladin to counter Demon Hunter has not worked over a very, very small sample size in Grandmasters. But if you look at larger sample on ladder, it certainly does seem to bear out that this is a favored matchup for the Paladin.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I think it's one that we're not going to argue about today. We're going to argue about a lot Sottle today, but this isn't one of them. I think that the reason in Grandmasters the sample is skewed is that's the whole of the 8 weeks, and I think the Paladin deck has got better and better refined in that time. And Demon Hunter hasn't really got that much different. So I think Paladin is now definitely capable of looking after this.
I really like this decision from Rivius. One of the first plays that you'll probably realize you've missed once or twice when playing this deck is he had the best possible 1-drop in his hand already, and he had a good 2-drop in his hand already. So he had no reason to play First Day of School up until this point because his curve was already set. So he gets to hold on to First Day of School to do this instead, which could essentially just straight up win the game on turn 4.
Although by the look of his face, it hasn't done.
It didn't.
Yeah.
No.
Great build-up. Sorry, let down by Rivius. But yeah, you just get an absolute monster this early in the game. Most of the time, you can see how unlikely it is from the look on his face there. And that is the end of the game if that hits.
Yeah, Rivius is, let's see, he is only playing 1 copy of Libram of Justice in his deck, so that really is the only reasonable whiff. He's also only playing 1 Hand of Adal as well, so, you know, the big chunk of spells in his deck really are those big impactful ones. It does seem like he's engineered the deck slightly towards that.
Yeah, I was going to say, having looked through and you saying that, that's just deliberate. That's how he's upset because he's made the deck not have this happen, and it's still happening.
Yep. He's still in a really good spot, though. Don't get that twisted at all. He has a ton of board presence right now. He has Divine Shield to be at least somewhat protected against Blade Dance here, and he has discounted Libram of Wisdom with a Libram of Wisdom already drawn and played. So he basically has everything going for him that Libram Paladin would want to have at this point in the game.
Yeah, the Pupil just staying in hand, ready for the moment when it decides, I don't want to be hit for 14 next turn. It's always a good spot to play it. And really, without Kane, then Demon Hunter really is going to struggle to get through all these taunts, that being the point of views.
Indeed. But that is efficient board clear number 1 at the very least. But oh my goodness, Rivius is away. Aldor Truthseeker, best card in the deck by some distance, in my opinion. And now Rivius just gets to pile these Librams up turn after turn after turn.
Surprisingly greedy or not greedy, depending how your definition of greedy goes, with the charges on his weapon here. There's several weapons in the deck. I'm surprised he didn't just swing the one in somewhere. Because Because there's going to be time. You know, there's going to be. He's got the angling rod in there, which is the latest tech. I don't know what the consensus is, or even if there is a consensus on that card yet. But I've seen it a few times, and people seem to like it.
It's going to help him get some value out of this hungry crab. I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
He is, however, falling behind on board, and I think this is key to Demon Hunter kind of flipping the script in what is a bad matchup, where you don't just straight up play for face damage, because that will get shut down, especially with how cheap Libram of Hope is now already, having been discounted by 3 already up until this point, I think. Yeah. But Libram Paladin really doesn't answer board states very, very well if you force them off board. Particularly if they don't draw Broom. If you haven't seen Salit's Pride, for example, come down, you have no indication that Broom is in hand. You can just try and win board and just push damage that way, which I think is what Give Please is doing very nicely here.
Yeah, it's underrated, especially when I first started playing with and against Demon Hunter. Like, I just like, oh, why don't they just hit face all the time? What are these stupid minions for? But actually, these stupid minions can develop into a reasonably irritating board.
Right.
Turns out that 5/5s are actually kind of annoying for most decks to deal with. That being said, at the moment, it looks like the Prime is the big deal here.
The Prime is a huge kicker for sure. The fact that's been drawn already might just be that last board state that he needs to throw down, because he has enough health to play with right now, which is like a natural byproduct of, you know, what I was saying before, where Give Please is paying a little bit more attention to the board than he necessarily needs to.
Rivius doesn't necessarily know he's got that much health to play with. I mean, he knows that 3 cards is a good spot for him.
Yeah.
But if one of those cards is going to draw 3 more cards, that's going to turn into, I don't know, 12 damage or something, you die very quickly, so...
Give Please's hand is just not getting there right now, though.
No.
He needs resources off the top. He needs card draw. He needs Skull, essentially.
He just needs Skull.
And then maybe the power of Consume Magic will be able to get him through from his perspective. But we have the liberty of being able to see the McGurgle Prime here, which means Give Please basically has no clock whatsoever.
Yeah, the second you get more than 4 minions down against Demon Hunter loses if it doesn't insta-kill you. It loses all capability of clearing boards at that point. And now the spells are going on the minions. This is just what you want to see if you're Rivius.
I mean, he has to play.
Yeah, just checking he's not dead over 2 turns, because this is quite a lot of damage. It does add up so fast, but I don't think he is.
It does, yeah. It's 8 being pushed this turn. If he plays the Cane now and he's able to stick damage,
Demons.
Like,
then he might just be getting there.
Libram of Hope, I lose, so that doesn't matter. Now it's just, can you do 23?
Yep. Yeah, I think you absolutely have to play the Cane here for exactly the reason that you just said. Like, forget about Libram of Hope. It's just absolutely not a card. Can't beat it.
The thing that's making this hard for him is that quite often Cane is exactly the opposite here. Quite often it works out that it's best not to play it, but this isn't that situation. So he might be fighting the instincts to some degree here, but he plays.
He has to play. He has to play it and either have a minion stick or draw damage. If he doesn't have a minion stick, it's literally his only out in this situation. He has to do it.
Well, there's no taunts.
Nothing. Nope. No rush. No charge.
Oof. 3/4. We're looking at 10 next turn?
Yep.
Anything at all for Give Please fans here that is a card needs to have the word damage written on it, or be a weapon.
And off the top comes the Sociologist. Oh no, it's such a good card. But it's just not the immediate damage he needs.
It's never a bad draw. This is like the first time ever that this card's been bad.
I mean, it's still pretty good. There's still, what, 4 fragments left remaining in the deck, so he can actually take some clean trades down here and stay alive this turn, which is a big deal.
Yeah. I don't think there are many other cards in the deck that didn't win the game, though, on the spot. I'm looking through the list now. Like, I think it may be the only card in the deck that didn't win on the spot, apart from Mana Feeder, which draws you another card.
So, wait, Soul Shear, Wand Maker, Blade Dance.
We've seen... Okay,
I'm looking at a deck tracker, Neil, and you're
right.
not.
Yeah. I'm just looking at a list. That's fair. I'll let you win this one, Sottle.
Yeah.
Not picking it up again here, though?
He's just dead.
That's
He's just dead.
insane. How has he lost this Hearthstone game? Oh, he can fling his Hoarder.
He can pen flinger his own loot hoarder for exactly Libram of Hope, which would cost 6 at this point, I believe, yes. That's not it.
Is there any other way he can get a card? I don't think so. Now he can put. Now the reason he's thinking is he doesn't know. He knows about the second slice, but he doesn't know about the twin slice. So where he's sat, he's not dead. He's got to clear this board up and hope. One of the few times that having caster vision is kind of boring. When you know the game is over, and we have to just watch somebody do this.
Really, all that's happening right now is that we are waiting for Rivius's reaction to see this twin slice come down, because he is doing the best he can in terms of clearing up this board state, which you can do a lot with the ability to chain Librams and a pen flinger, but the second he sees this twin slice come down, he's going to be in trouble. And Give Please is even going to make him wait an extra couple of seconds by playing the second slice first. And there is the reaction. Rivius now 0-2 down in this series.
Yeah, and the Demon Hunter getting through the Paladin is the big headline so far in this game, or in this match. Like, that is the one that it's meant to beat, and you say often on Grandmasters, not all matches, not all games are created equal, and that one is definitely not created equal.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think it was a very winnable game from Rivius' perspective as well. Both in his hands and out of his hands. Obviously, the part that was out of his hands was the worst possible outcome from the High Abyss Allura on turn 4, where he's clearly built his deck to make that a very powerful option. But from that point onwards, there were multiple positions where he was slightly inefficient. His Pyromancer turn, for example, was missequenced, and I think even towards the end, there was the way he cleared up the board on the first turn where he dodged the lethal with the Sociologist Militia wasn't as efficient as it could have been either, which when you then end up getting exact lethaled at the end by twin slices and second slices, you have to then go back and look at that again and ask the question of whether that reverses the position of the game, because as you were saying, that's probably the most important game that they're going to play in this series of Demon Hunter versus Paladin.
Yeah, some positioning errors in the Priest game as well that probably didn't cost him it, but they all add up, especially at this level. Like, you are fighting against the guy who wants your Grandmaster spot. You've got to be on your top game.
And beyond that point, it's not yours anymore. He's not entitled to it at this point. Like, he is scrapping for it as much as anyone else is. So, you know, right now, as it stands, Give Please is more of a Grandmaster than Rivius is, because he's up there at the very top of the standings and Rivius is not.
Yeah, and he's been there. He's been one match away from the top 8 3 times. If you're saying, well, this guy's not been in the top 8, well, okay, yeah, he hasn't, but you know, good luck with that and all that. Eventually, it will happen if you keep getting one match away.
Yes,
that's just how it works. I like Give Please's attitude. When I interviewed him, he was talking about how he reached the playoffs just 3 times, but never made an impact, like 2 or 3 years ago. And I looked through and not making an impact. I mean, one of those was 17th place, you know, out of all of the players in the whole of Asia Pacific. Yeah. So his idea of not making an impact is definitely different to some people. So I like this attitude. I think making an impact to him is just winning everything.
Yeah, and I mean, what better way to get this started than with a 3-0? And this now this spells trouble for Rivius, because when we talk about the context of the series and how that was a big, important matchup for Rivius to come out ahead in with the Libram Paladin, it's because it gets the Libram Paladin out of the series. And a big part of the reason why Libram Paladin has not really been a force in tournament lineups up until this point is because there's just specific bad matchups against decks that are very, very common, such as Mage and Priest. Yep. So now with Paladin still remaining in the series and Priest still remaining in the series on the other side, Rivius has to try and win an extremely difficult matchup from his side, because the Priest just has so many opportunities to shut down the persistent value of Libram of Wisdom, just steal it away, Cabal Acolyte, Wave of Apathy, whatever it takes to get it on their side of the board and shut it down. Not to mention their ability to just fight for board extremely efficiently in the early game anyway, which Paladin absolutely hates dealing with. So this is a huge uphill struggle now from Rivius, not only in this matchup, but in the series in general.
Yeah, and you're going to hear me mention the word Soul Mirror quite a lot today as well, and the Paladin really struggles to force that out in the earlier game as well. So when Soul Mirror is cast, the Priest tends to just kill everything in a really crucial time. It doesn't need to mess around with these little boards. They can be pyromancered away and so on. So this is a tough choice, though. You quite often want to have the Shadow Word Death early in this, just to get rid of that one huge terrifying threat that comes along. But the good players tend to leave everything at 4 attack anyway.
They do, yeah. Shadow at Death obviously means that they can't really put Librams on their Outdoor Truthseeker or their Devout Pupil or anything that starts at 4 attack anyway, but really, if you're experienced in this matchup as the Paladin, you generally don't put Librams on high-value targets to begin with, because it then just makes the potential steal way too punishing if you end up doing that. You generally have like your big targets on the board and then put your Librams on the smaller targets, so it ends up being less punishing if they do get stolen away.
Yeah, it's been interesting climbing up through the dumpster, like, with that going on. Like, originally I was taking Shadow Word Death every single time because everybody just make, oh, here's my 6/8. I'm like, okay, it's dead. And then suddenly I realised, hey, I've got this dead card in my hand. Now I'm playing it to slightly better players all the time. So, nice to watch the layers of Hearthstone.
Rivius clearly a click, move, click gamer when it comes to playing Hearthstone, with the card floating in the air while his hands are not on his mouse right now.
Yeah, I still drag, which is really wrong of me. It's going to cost me games at some point.
Yeah.
I was curious that last turn as to why he took so long, actually, but there's nothing wrong with taking the time. It's just when Rivius sees things, he tends to just play things.
Yeah, I mean, I think you saw from the action he was kind of committed to the line anyway, right? But I think, honestly, when a series starts going badly as it has been here, and as the play has been quite sloppy as it has been here, as I think from Rivius, the mantra of, okay, hands off mouse is actually not a bad one to go for, right? It's just like, distance yourself from the situation for a second, just think about things, even if the play seems obvious to you at first.
It's not the ideal time zone for the APAC players either. It's sort of midnight-ish over there already. The Americans complain, but at least they get out of bed, have a coffee, and start playing their tournament, even if they're a bit weary and tired. The APAC guys have got to just stay up and stay up, stay up.
There is that Cabal Shadow Priest, first of the big threats that have really become available for Give Please to make something happen, especially if Wave of Apathy is now to appear at some point. He got a very nice value raised dead on the previous turn. Not only gave him back these 2 extra resource generators with the Wand Maker and the Clericus Scales, but also buffed up that Twilight Drake to the point where he's now just kind of winning on board already, which, as I said right at the start, is just another one of the reasons why Priest really dominates this matchup, because they can just play the mid-range game so efficiently.
Yeah, not tempted to play the Apotheosis and just start hitting with a big thing, just equalizing on board, but my things are bigger than yours, so I'm going to kill you. That's the way forward here. As we've said already, it's a tempo deck, it's not a control deck.
And drop the Renew here, I imagine, yeah. Wave of Apathy with the Cabal Shadow Priest in hand. Very sharp pick from Give Please, very fast pick as well, and you can exactly see why. Rivius, his deck in general is just in the business of being able to buff up minions, which means Wave of Apathy, Cabal Shadow Priest shuts all of that down. Now again, you will generally try and divert away from that as much as possible against Priest, because you have to play a little bit differently. But there's so many cards in your deck that if you're just not going to play them because they're going to get stolen, you end up with a handful of, you know, insane resources that you're just not playing on every turn, which at some point you do have to make a push.
Yeah, and that's the problem with buff cards in general. If it gets stolen, you've given your opponent so much. Even in modern Hearthstone, where you have a lot of cards, it's back-breaking amounts of value and tempo all in one go.
Yep. Sethic Apotheosis, Sethic Inner Fire. Okay, yeah, fair enough. This works too.
Sethic's so silly. It doesn't need to do that much to be absolutely ridiculous. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous. He's only played 2 cards.
Mm-hmm.
And now...
Second Shadow of Death is interesting there. I was kind of thinking in terms of efficiency that maybe he could have Inner Fire Shadow of Death to the opposing target, so he got the 2 procs off the Sethic, but he kind of did that with the Holy Smite anyway, so I guess it's just down to which of the cards you would rather preserve, plus this way he's leaving a larger minion of his own on the board, so this is probably fine.
I think if people are wondering why Broom ended up in this rather weird Paladin deck, this is exactly when it got in. It's like, you used to lose the game entirely if you got into this spot as Paladin. But with the brooms and the cheaper, more efficient minions it has going on nowadays, it gives you a little bit of a chance to wriggle back into the game when you get behind this far.
Yeah. There's 2 factors as well, right? Like, firstly, it's a comeback mechanism, which, great. I think particularly when you get 0 mana Libram of Wisdom, you can do a surprising amount with small minions and value, and just trading, you know, machine gun Librams, essentially. Just put it on one, trade it in, it dies, you get it back in your hand, put it on a different one, and so on. But also, it's a card draw engine, which I think Paladin really struggles with, right? When you combine Broom, Loot Hoarder, Salad's Pride, you actually get this very, very efficient card draw engine that thins your deck of all the other nonsense you don't need. Meanwhile,
he missed, right?
What happened this turn?
So he saw the owl. He saw the owl, thought that kills Twilight Drakes. Like, that's the first thing we all think. Realised he couldn't play it because owls cost 3 because it's not 2016 anymore. Went to play the McGurgle and timed it.
Like, I've been giving him a break up until a point, Lorinda, but if his statement is going to be, I'll be back, I'll see you soon, not playing like this he isn't. I'm sorry, it's just not happening.
Yeah, he's made fundamental mistakes in all 3 games to some degree.
Yeah.
This was exactly the bit Xananan was having trouble with yesterday, but he said he was going to play all day to fix it. It was just the APM of this deck is sneaky high. As it is with most of Hearthstone now, in fact.
My hand is
Yeah,
full.
most of Hearthstone in multiple game modes, in fact. Actually becoming a surprisingly high APM game. Yeah, but now we've reached the point of the game. Sorry, we've reached a point in the game now where that Cabal Shadow Priest is basically a constant threat. Burning the other Wave of Apathy is actually a surprisingly big deal off the top, even though he has the first one in hand, because he ends up with multiple steel minions in hand, but only 1 activator for them.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to see him have more cheap stuff in hand, because at some point he's going to possibly need a Pyro as well. I think he's okay,
sure,
but, you know, just to be greedy.
It's fair.
I don't think it'll matter. I think he's just about got control, but that is something you can do, is run out of cheap stuff and you draw your Pyro and go, oh, it's dead. It doesn't do anything. But he's got Apotheosis and some wands. He's okay.
Yeah.
As well as the fact he's got big cards in hand and control of the board, and his opponent's playing quite badly.
Yes. Those are all fairly important factors too, I agree. So this is kind of the Libram Gatling gun I was talking about before, where you can pick up a big trade with 1 minion and then immediately refresh that value on the Libram to go into another one if you would like to, but no real big trade available for this Acorn Bearer, so Rivius is just going to try and load up some minions here, but he is very, very rapidly running out of significant value. 12 cards remaining in his deck, and most of his heavy hitters still in there. Double Devout Pupil, double Libram of Hope, I believe, still left remaining in that deck.
And very little way to clear the board that I think Give Please is about to make.
What
it feels like the turn where you just go for it, make a load of stuff, and say you're not dealing with this ever.
Well, I mean, his hand very specifically only contains ways to answer a big board from Give Please, right? Like, what he's lacking is ways to make proactive boards on his own. But just with, like, Barov Broom, he's able to clear up most of the board state that he'll be dealing with.
Evasive Worm. Another sneaky good card. When you create it, you don't want to play it, obviously.
Cabal Shadow Priest again off the raised dead. Had to go in that order just for hand space considerations, I suppose.
Yeah, he didn't have space to put the extra 14th Cabal Shadow Priest.
Mm-hmm. But I do like this Grave Rune. That is going to make his board as sticky as possible here, although that Penflinger might now actually be able to get some work done.
Yes.
Yep. Libram of Wisdom. Libram of Wisdom, trade, pop open the Grave Rune, and then he's in business, at least with the board clear.
I mean, yes. I'm trying to get enthused about the fact he can get back into this, because he definitely can. Penflinger can do a lot of damage, but I just see the Apotheosis and a handful of things that steal your deck and say, I don't see it coming, but maybe Give Please makes a mistake or something, because he can definitely lose this if he does. This interaction, the minute irritates me. Not this one. The one where the Penflinger blows up and then returns to your hand under...
Yes! Okay. Yeah. So none of this is actually really achieving anything. It's just Rivius is trying to push as much Penflinger damage as he can on every turn, right? That's why these Penflingers are just being played over and over again multiple times. He's trying to find himself some kind of lethal out potential if he can just push a lot of damage, but what is this hand doing right now, Lorinda? Like, it's an absolute disaster.
I'm still not convinced by Penflingers. I understand the point. I see how much damage they do in this and in Demon Hunter, but I also see how much mana it costs to achieve very little most of the time. Yeah, sometimes you machine gun them down for 10 damage or something, but a lot of the time you do what happened last turn, you do 3 damage, you end with a board of 2 squirrels.
I'm really disappointed, honestly, Lorinda. The multiple opportunities to make some kind of joke about how, like, Rivius has all the squirrels, but Give Please has the nuts, and like that's such a Lorinda joke that I've just been leaving it to you for so long, but I can't wait any longer.
Yeah, I'm out of practice.
I just can't wait any longer. I can't. It's got to be done.
Fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'll let you have that one.
Okay.
I'll get back tomorrow. I'll get into the flow of it all a little bit better tomorrow. I'm not going to let you get away with that for too long.
Finally,
no
the value
hope at all.
There we go. All right, back on form. He's back in the game, ladies and
Took me
gentlemen.
a moment.
Yeah. But it is way too little too late at this point, it looks like. Give Please has generated another fresh wave of apathy combo for the Cabal Shadow Priest that he got off the Raised Dead, so any big minion that comes down is just getting stolen. The healing's irrelevant, he can't really answer the board state. What's the plan? Because I don't see one.
Well, you can ping your opponent 3 times. Seems to be the thing the kids do these days.
Quickly.
Yeah, it's basically over. You've just got to play your cards out, because that's literally all you can do in the most boring sense of the word. And hope that somehow this priest that has been gathering the cards of his choice all game gathered the wrong ones.
Yes.
I don't know how many of these cards were selected by Give Please, but I think it's about 4 at this point. Especially if you count the Shadow Priest as like a half, because he went for it.
Curious now as to whether this is even the steal, because you could just go Murazond, right? And just say double 8/8 this turn, and then still be able to Shadow a Death on the other side.
Yeah, this is where my brain struggles with the game. This is where I just kill everything and hit them in the face, and I've still got a load of cards left. Of course, it's not efficient, but I can no longer process what might be good and bad when I'm so far in front. This is why I'm not a Grandmaster.
Penflinger just switching teams at the last to add insult into injury. Penflinger's like, hang on. Why do people always put me in Libram Paladin? Can I be in a good deck now, please? Thank you. All right, I'm switching teams to the Priest.
Yeah, just going to pick his pen up on the other side of the battlefield. Jokes aside, if Give Please does get into Grandmasters, that's by no means a given. He needs a lot more wins yet. It's only round 2. I'm glad that he's beaten Rivius along the way. Nice to see, we know how good he is already, but just to beat a few Grandmasters on stream along the way would just make him absolutely secure from the moment he starts in people's minds.
I can see that. Right now, Rivius absolutely feeling it.
Me think.
He has ball clear options with Libram of Justice and Penflinger, but not nearly enough to really feel like he's having a big enough impact on the game right now.
Get that Murloc, the one that wins the game against this board. Get it now.
Which one is that again?
I'll let you know when I see it in just a moment. Yeah, I'm sure Vivius knows.
But now what, right? Like, this is the sketchy thing. He just has to, like, hero power Libram of Wisdom and then shoot the 8-1. Like, that's the play this turn, I guess.
This is why I struggle with Paladin to be impressed with the Penflinger, because all the things it does are great, including what he just did there. That's not the Murloc I was talking about.
Was it Grimscale Oracle, Lorinda?
Absolutely wasn't Grimscale Oracle, I don't think.
Okay.
But the Penflinger's done a lot of good stuff, but only because he's losing horribly. And I think that's a theme. We'll keep an eye on it through the day. A lot of good players have brought this deck, but there's been this weird disconnect on ladder stats and tournament play where mediocre ladder players, and by mediocre I mean pretty good, top few thousand legend, just do well with Paladin against other mediocre ladder players. When you stick it in amongst the best players in the world, Paladin just seems to not get anywhere.
Ah, yes. More value. That's what this hand needs.
I like this attitude, though.
There is a certain twisted mindset that you get into as a priest player. It doesn't matter if you have 8 cards, 9 cards, 10 cards in hand. You just still end up taking the highest value card every single time. There's always this thing in the back of your mind that's like, well, eventually I'll run out of stuff to do, right? No, you won't.
I mean, he's got to play this deck all night, bless him, and might as well keep doing things properly, because, like I say, it's about midnight where he is now.
Yeah.
There's 3 more rounds to go. At some point, your brain, whoever you are, is just going to shut off. So keep that autopilot going.
Skeletal Dragon just feeding another Onyx Mage Scribe. Yeah, Ribius taps out, says end the misery. Give Please is going to be the player going up to the 2-0 record there. And quite fittingly, as I believe he is currently in 2nd place overall in the standings, trying to chase down Lambie Series for that 1st place spot. But even if he just maintains parity, if he stays where he is at the end of this Masters Tour, he will be a Grandmaster going into the 2021 season.
I think he would. I mean, obviously he would, but also getting a top 8 is something I feel he wants to really achieve. Something that Dead Draw has that he doesn't when we're talking about those sort of things, as we see the standings there. So yeah, top 8 would not only seal it, but seal it with a style that I think he would like. But yeah, looking fantastic. And that list actually shows that as long as he does okay, unless somebody wins it, they're not going to come out and really dislodge him that easily.
Yeah, it's very difficult for a lot of players to overtake him in this position, especially those that aren't on that list, which means he is in prime position. I do think that, if I were an APAC player, seeing how much us smug Europeans talk about the discrepancy in prize money between the European standings and the other regions, if I was an Americas or an APAC player on this list, there would be a part of me that just wants there to be an APAC winner of a Masters Tour, or wants there to be an America's winner of a Masters Tour, just so they get that big number on the board and it doesn't actually look so tiny in comparison to everyone else. So I think, outside of top 8, I think you are absolutely correct in pointing that out as a motivator. I do think the overall win is a big motivator for these players as well, for multiple reasons, not just what it means for becoming a Grandmaster, but for what it means for the sanctity of their regions as well.
Yeah, I mean, those dollars aren't just points, they're actual dollars you can put in your bank account as well. 30,000 of those. Yes, please, we'll have that. I think that's often overlooked when we get to these GM qualifying tournaments. It's just a lot of money.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's potentially life-changing amounts of money, depending on the region that you live in and the cost of living, right? Like, potentially that can set you up for quite some time, or it can be life-changing in the sense of this is what convinces me, or convinces my parents, or convinces whoever it is that I can actually do this as a permanent career, right? Where I have this one-off huge check in my pocket, and then that means I'm a Grandmaster with a consistent source of income through this as well. It can generally just change your outlook on following Hearthstone as a career.
Yep. And so that's that done for round number 2, but we've got plenty more of round 2 to come. And although I don't think we're going to be starting off with somebody from this region, keep an eye on Portugal. They are destroying good players throughout the Swiss at the moment, or at least they were last time I looked. So we're going to have a break. We're going to bring some more matches from this round, and we'll see you very soon.
없어요. 오늘의 운세라는 그런 항목을 한 번씩 찾아봅니다. 그래서 예전에 우승했을 때 그 운세가 굉장히 좋게 나왔어서 그 뒤로는 계속 대회 때마다 보는 습관이 생긴 것 같아요.
자고 일어난 다음에 한참 뒤에 게임하면은 약간 지는? 근데 뭐 그런 게 있는 것 같아요. 그래서 그랜드마스터 전에 한 1시간 전에 일어나가지고 준비해요.
I don't have any superstition because when first time I come to BlizzCon in 2014 and I come to the temple for victory, but I lose layer. So after that, I didn't come to any temple anymore. Yeah.
It's going well for me, Raven, but I am worried for APAC because of that Paladin, because there's quite a few players that are bringing similar archetypes, if not the same list. I think I've been seeing some people tweet out even pure Paladin, and I'm even more worried about that version compared to the Penflinger version. But we'll see. Only time can tell because we are very early throughout the day. I believe that was you muted for a while, which is strange because I'm generally the one that has the muted accidents here, but we will have for the round 2 REM match is Taesang versus Hai3, and Taesang is a South Korean player and so is his opponent. I believe that he is a streamer, but definitely haven't been seeing his name on my radar that much recently in the Masters Tour. As for a lineup, it's looking like very standard lists across the board and just no big surprises in terms of archetype. For Hai3 though, he does have that Paladin, which surprisingly has been banned away by Taesang, even though I feel that it was maybe not in the best spot. It's quite possible that a lot of the APAC players are just more aware of how to play the deck, and have a bit more respect for it than I do.
Yeah, hopefully we can hear me now. I apologize about that, guys. I definitely wasn't muted on my end, but apparently that's how it came across. So yeah, hopefully you can hear me now. We'll find out soon enough, as I'll get told in my ear if you can't. But yeah, the Paladin ban, again, we had one in the previous round on stream as well, and it's definitely just shown a lot of players just respect Paladin a little bit more than I thought they would, at least, even though we have been seeing it struggle. But overall, I do think both players are just bringing these kind of, I would say, just a standard lineup, at least for this meta.
Yes, definitely seems that way. Maybe it's the lists where you can see a bit more of the flavor come in from High 3. We saw that the Demon Hunter was still including Magtheridon, which I know you're a fan of, even though a lot of players have been cutting it these days. We will start off, though, with what is already Game 3, with High 3 up 2-0 against Taesang, and Taesang has to play his Mage.
Yeah, definitely tough to make a comeback when you are 2-0 down, of course. And this is a bit of a weird matchup. Do you what do you think about the matchup? But do you think the nerfs are going to have much effect in this one against Priest?
Well, I tend to think that Mage is slightly favored in this matchup, but that's coming from somebody who played a lot of Mage before the nerfs and not so much after. I do think it'll have quite an impact because there's a lot of situations where the Mage gasses out and you kind of rely on Solarian Prime to be your next big threat. So maybe that coming down a couple turns later will be annoying. But it's funny that it's also kind of a nerf for Priest because the Priest tends to steal Solarians in this matchup.
That's true, actually, yeah. You also have to have my slightly worse cards now. But we did see in match number 1 of the day, Solarian Prime, hey, if you've got 9 mana, it still does the job anyway. So we'll see if that's going to be the case here. But we said we are going to this game number 3. Taesang, not really got the best opening hand in the world, although that definitely helps.
Oh yeah, that is a spicy pickup. Kind of makes it tempting to pop off early here, but it does look like he'll want to use some of the cheap spells right now. Maybe the fact that he picked up Apprentice will lead him towards just ping and trade on the Wandmaker instead.
What to do?
Oh, looks like he's going to go for that Arcane Breath.
And does get some very premium options. This is one of this matchup where you can actually take the greedy picks. I do like Power of Creation in the end because it is the most proactive.
Yes, I think really when you look at Power versus Deep Freeze, it's does your opponent play weapons or not? If not, Power of Creation normally a little bit stronger. I do like it overall. You know.
There's also just a lot of 6-drops that have a stat line that Priest kind of struggles to deal with. 4/5s are notably not well interacted with by Soul Mirror.
I'm just taking a quick look at Taesang's list. He is not running a natural devolving missiles in there, which is a bit of a problem against Kaj when that comes down early from Priest. It's always a tough minion to deal with from Mage because, yes, you can kill it, but can you kill the second minion as easily? It does normally require quite a lot of resources.
Yeah, it's already being quite problematic here for Taesang. He is going to go fishing, and even if it's not exactly devolving missiles, even a freeze effect here to fill out the mana would be pretty useful. Without that option, though, definitely eyeing the Evocation to pair with the Apprentice that he already has in hand.
Yeah, and we get to see yet again, right? Already, in some worlds, you could see Shemvala coin Apprentice Evocation, you know, in pre-nerf world, should I say? But because that has to just come down that little bit later, it will give High 3 just a little bit more time to get control of the board and maybe make that potential play a lot weaker.
That is very true. This turn for High 3 does look very much just like an Apotheosis because he has nothing better to do play. This is one of the matchups where you don't necessarily have to hold on to Apotheosis for a big Pyro combo later on. I think he's just interested in maybe trying to get value out of the steal on Thalnos if he had the mana that turn, but it wasn't available.
With Taesang's hovering this Apprentice, I imagine if Apprentice comes down, so does Evocation, at least one of them.
I would imagine that as well. But he doesn't have very much mana to work with. Maybe he would be happy with just a secret here and a couple of the 1-cost spells looking for side quest, Devolving Missiles. Gets the Devolving.
Oh, that is so huge. That just went from this Kaj being a huge problem to just insignificant now. That is insane.
Yeah, picks up a pretty good side quest as well. I am worried about Taesung's follow-up because after the apprentice gets cleared, it's really tough to use the second evocation. But I think it's by virtue of him having drawn the second evocation that he was so willing to throw out the first one.
And also, if you look at his hand as well, he has Spellkin next turn. He does have Power of Creation coming up as well. So he can play a little bit more of a slower game just with the cards he has available. Like, obviously, Mage doesn't have to pop off early. It doesn't have to go crazy in the early game to win games. And he is at least reasonably equipped to play a bit of a slower game here.
Might look a little bit jarring for him to play Frost Nova there, but he just wanted that additional reduction on the Mana Giants, which are in his deck. So use that instead of pinging here. High 3 gonna go for the steal because otherwise he didn't have an answer for Apprentice and it's not even guaranteed. So that sticking around is such a headache.
I mean, this looks like a easy Shemvala turn now. What I was talking about the Spellkin was I expected this Apprentice. And I think it's fair for Taesung to expect the Apprentice to die on that turn, but Shemvala coming down now with another evocation. At worst, there's Devolving Missiles and Cram Session. At absolute worst. Looking pretty good as far as I can see.
Yeah, that's insane. This is coming down very likely to get one activation, and that's before Soul Mirror is available. He's also just seen the Cabal Acolyte, so it's likely that his Shenvala itself is relatively safe. Picks up Ray of Frost as well, so he has access to a double activation here. It's huge.
Yeah, it looks worth to me.
Gonna start with the Cram Session because he can still finish with the double Rays of Frost.
Yeah, and doing this into turn 6 means there's still the Soul Mirror dodge turn, right? Like, he doesn't have to worry about Soul Mirror coming down next turn to sort of blow all these 5/5s away. Huge.
Yeah, it's extremely powerful. And High 3 already has to scramble for ways to remove this. The fact that he hasn't had a dragon to activate his Cleric of Scales has been backbreaking, really, because he's had to use these precious resources of the Cabal Acolyte to go on a 50-50 just to get rid of the Apprentice. I feel like if he had more mana, we're in the territory where he already needs Deathwing to work. But I was gonna say, it seems pretty ambitious because it's far away.
I'm always in the territory of considering Deathwing because, one, it's just funny, but two, very seriously, High 3 with Wave of Apathy and some heals, he can at least survive a couple of turns, and maybe that's the desperation where he's at. He has no immediate way to deal with this board, and at least if he can just Deathwing the board away, if he survives long enough, it might not win him the game, but it gives him much more of a chance than I think the other options did, honestly.
Certainly, I like that line of thinking, but I was just wondering where the bridge, the gap turn would end up, but the fact that he picked up the second Draconic Studies to make Deathwing come down possibly even on 8 mana is huge, because now he just needs Wave of Apathy, that's one turn, and then you don't necessarily need to worry about how to survive the turn after. And
also as well, I like this turn a lot from High 3 actually, because he has if you play the Deathwing, it means he can then just build on it the turns after, and maybe he can push the damage, but I do think he can take this much damage, which, as you mentioned, did allow him to hold on to that wave, so I like this a lot here. Is it going to pay off, though? Because he is getting hit very hard.
In the meantime, though, I like the complete hold from Taesung, realizing that he didn't need to commit Lab Partner or any other resources. His board was threatening enough for the very next turn, already warrants a Soul Mirror or Wave of Apathy, so he's just holding on to a spell damage minion in case he gets another Cram Session.
Well, there's the wave and the heal. Makes sense. I was a little bit surprised there wasn't a kill attempt on the Sorcerer's Apprentice, at least.
Yeah, me too, because it does feel like he is going to go for Deathwing next turn, so all his cards are getting deleted anyway.
Right.
It could have even been the Cobalt Spellkin to try and land something like Radiance just to use the mana.
That's it, isn't it? Because what would have to be drawn next turn for this not, I guess, Soul Mirror?
Oh, a bit funny for Taesung, doesn't have the board space to get his dragon, but is just going to prioritize the face damage, and I absolutely think that is fine. The Divine Shields on these also make them a bit more resilient to Soul Mirror.
So close to just lethal as well with the Arcane Missiles in hand.
Well, I am power incarnate. Not something you see every day, and it is definitely a Hail Mary, but from High3's perspective, he has seen one of the natural rays of frost from Taesang come out already, so he's hoping that this can't get frozen too many more times.
Yeah, that's the benefit, isn't it? This play from High3 in certain matchups can actually win you the game. But against Mage specifically, with the amount of freeze they have access to, transform effects, etc., I think this is definitely a desperation stall attempt from High3 and not a game-winning play.
Oh, I apologize. He didn't play a minion that turn we were suggesting because, of course, that would have reset the discount on the Deathwing, so he could have played it. That is my bad. And Taesang here... It's unfortunate that he can't develop the Malagos at the same time as the Freeze, but now that he has Brain Freeze on top of Ray of Frost, he can very much just put together a very slow lethal. High3 has very few singular top decks that get him out of this.
I know it's never going to happen, but I would love to see a double Malagos board. But yeah, I do like this, right? There's the Freeze this turn, and then there's even just Malagos Brain Freeze next turn if he really wants. Like there's so much available to him, and even just Malagos missiles potentially next turn. Actually, even if he needs that, but I half forgot that Brain Freeze was doing 5 on this board because the double spell damage as well. That is a significant amount of extra damage on that Deathwing.
Yep. Oh. Taesang experiencing the same problem of if he plays a spell damage minion that will reset the discount, and so Malagos can't come down with more burst next turn, but he very much realizes that if he just sticks the damage on board, he has a good shot of making lethal with these small minions. High3, what is the best result he can get from this? The Cleric of Scales won't even necessarily be active if he gets it, so he's going to hold it all together.
It's tough, right?
Yeah.
I guess he didn't really have anything great to get, but I also wonder, does holding it actually change anything at all anyway?
Yeah, very good point. I'm unsure. It feels like he's just trying to hold out for a Soul Mirror top deck either way and potentially stick the Deathwing while clearing most of Taesang's board. I think it's reasonable, but the second freeze, which he knew was in hand, is super backbreaking.
I'm really surprised he didn't just try and rip the Arcane Missiles there. Of course he has Malagos Missiles next turn, but that looks like it is actually just going to be the Conceders. We didn't get to see, I don't think, but I imagine High3 did not get anything too great and was not able to hold off the aggression there. So huge game there for Taesang. He can start his fight back now against High3. Obviously going 0-2 down, very, very rough, but getting a win there. On his mage. It's showing us a warrior for some reason there. I'm pretty sure we just cast a mage game, so I'm sure that's wrong. But it does mean he still has his warrior and demon hunter left to get wins with as well. So it was a tough one there, and High3 definitely felt like he got left hanging there with his priest. Just didn't really have the resources to keep up with the pace of the mage.
It's true. It's rare we see priest games pan out that way, where they just very much seem to have very few options. It's maybe a small side effect of High3 running this list, which does make room for a bit more tech with the Kobold Sticky Finger in there, but Priest generally relies on sticking the early Sethic or maybe getting the Cleric of Scales train running a little bit earlier when it comes to the Mage matchup. Against Demon Hunter, though, they will definitely be looking to put together the big Pyro Apotheosis burst healing later on.
Yeah, this is a matchup I actually really enjoy casting. I think it's so tricky from both sides, actually, on how you manage it. It's a lot of fun, and we can see that there is the Kobold Sticky Finger in High3's hand. There is only the one in his deck, and Taesang is actually playing a Horde Pillager in his list as well. There's an extent where you can say those two things kind of cancel each other out. You get one weapon stolen, but you get to regenerate one of your other weapons. So it's not like we're going to see, a priest with 4 weapon removals go up here. It's still a fairly, I would say, standard matchup.
Certainly. And the Kobold Sticky Finger, I think, actually, in most other matchups, you would rather steal the Marrow Slicer, but High3 would be happy ending up with a stolen Eldrazi Warblades, potentially, because he can also try and find ways of copying the weapon buff effects on the other side and get more healing from there. Double Draconic Studies Keep is trying to prevent the situation he had last game, where there's just absolutely nothing to do in the early turns, and you can already see it's making such a big difference to activate the Cleric of Scales.
Options here. 2 out of the 3, I would say, are pretty decent in this matchup. The Evasive Worm, even though doesn't look defensive, actually just can be, with Rush, of course, taking out some of those big 5 drops that you're a little bit afraid of against Demon Hunter. But Evasive does look, Evasive Draconid, should I say, does look like a good choice here with the taunt.
Yeah, the Draconid is definitely problematic for Demon Hunter to get through. They can't target it with Soul Shears and the like. Likely they're going to Blade Dance anyway, but sometimes as a singular minion on board, it can be the type of threat that they don't want to commit one of those AoEs onto.
And here, though, Taesang's hand is one you want as the Demon Hunter in this matchup. You've got a decent amount of minion threats early game, but most importantly, there's just card draw, right? You can just keep it going. You can see now the skull on the far left. There's another Mana Feeder Panthara for if and when he wants it active. There's even the Lapidary if he gets hold of some Soul Fragment generation cards, which really, looking at this hand, is all Taesang's really missing to really just take a hold of this game.
That's right, it really unlocks the big potential here, but before he's able to really stick the minions and push the damage turn after turn, he is respecting the board because he knows that every single minion could be a threat for Apotheosis later on. And so I can expect that Taesang will actually fall behind for the next couple turns before the skull comes online.
Especially with Raised Dead, right? There goes the Kobold Sticky Finger. Gonna steal the second swing. Not the biggest problem in the world for Taesang, especially because it is only 1 charge. It's not like he fell into the trap that is the pre-equip into that card. But that Raised Dead is huge there. High 3's got another Cleric, another Chrono Breaker to drop down. It's just more and more cards Taesang to try and deal with here.
Yeah, High 3 has the premium situation as Priest where he can just pressure, and for every single minion that he puts on board, it's 2-pronged attack because he is threatening healing on it with Apotheosis and also just trying to burst Taesang down. And he'll know not to overcommit into a Blade Dance so that every single turn he can keep refilling. This turn for Taesang is very awkward because he doesn't have the cleanest way to get rid of the Sticky Finger, and if he goes for the card draw, he is likely to float some mana.
Yeah, it's a tough one. The silver lining of this turn is if Apotheosis comes down on the minion you've left up, it's not the biggest deal, right? Normally, where we would see Apotheosis saved for Pyromancer. So this 4/4 is very killable in the future for Taesang. So not the worst case scenario, but of course would have maybe liked to have this Marrow Slicer in his hand for the start of the turn and not the end.
Right. I think Taesang is highly aware that any damage he deals in this type of board state where he falls behind is almost immediately going to be negated by High 3 one way or another, whether it's through healing or the fact that Taesang will eventually have to sink damage into minions because he's falling too far behind. So he's really relying on this skull to be able to get him to clear the board and develop minions all at the same time. It's going to have to be a big swing. And the fact that he's already got both the Lapidaries and the Blade Dances in hand, which means they can't be discounted by skull, is very important here.
Yeah, normally you are looking for those, the big expensive cards to be reduced down. There are 2 Glaive-bound Adepts in his list that can still be hit by the skull, which is still pretty powerful.
Yes. The big swing cards are the ones you want to discount, and I tend to think that Lapidary and Blade Dance together is the most backbreaking combination off of Skull, but the Glaive Bound could be clutch a bit later. The problem with Skull this turn, though, is it appears he is possibly going to overdraw if he gets 3 cards that he doesn't necessarily want to play, and there's also room to think about just, say, equipping Marrow Slicer to set up for a Blade Dance.
Yeah, I actually quite like the Hero Power swing and then equip Marrow Slicer, because I don't think he wants to swing it this turn, does he? He does. Okay, fair enough. I thought he could have saved the swing because he has 2 Blade Dance and only 1 Marrow Slicer right now. I think holding on to that high starting weapon damage is powerful. But yeah, he did just go for it, chucking some damage to the face.
It's quite interesting. I think the big thinking behind this is really trying just to get the fragments into the deck, which unlocks the Lapidaries. And he could be thinking that even without the Marrow Slicer weapon itself, the second Blade Dance can be paired with the second Lapidary.
I imagine we might well see that now, as it looks like it lines up a pretty nice Blade Dance to take down that Chrono Breaker.
Yeah, that is huge.
Do you think he cares that the Chrono Breaker's almost certainly going to deal damage to Lapidary? I think he knows that 100%, right?
Yep, because of the Draconic Studies that was played a couple turns ago. I mean, it's annoying, but this is still by far the best play he has onto the board, and it's if High 3 wants to face tank the Lapidary to get rid of it, that's still kind of a win for Taesang.
That's true. I was wondering if there was any merit of actually just like hero power swing, then hero power blade dance then swing, and then just play something else that turn. But it might have been a bit trying to be too fancy.
Yeah, perhaps. I think he also just really wanted to connect the damage phase, and the swing into an Apotheosis minion would be a bit too much.
He just raised dead into another sticky fingers. That is insane. Oh, it was a decent chunk of other minions it could have been. And you got the sticky fingers right off the bat.
That's
brutal,
going to
make
right?
this a lot more difficult. Yeah.
We're entering the point of the game where Taesang is worried about Murazon, so he won't want to play Eldraki with Twin Slices all on the same turn. He'll think about, say, just pre-equipping Eldraki, but when you do that, you're walking into the raised dead sticky finger. One thing's for sure, though, he needs to get the Skull online in order to put together a more powerful turn afterward.
Yeah, not the best Skull I've ever seen, but at least a ton of playable cards. Now, if he was running the Altruist version, then we could talk. But yeah, not going to be the case this time. I think Taesang really needs to get to that Horde Pillager he has in his list, actually, and try and get another Marrow Slicer re-equipped.
Certainly feels that way. The Demon Companion feels like it is... I was going to say not necessary this turn, but the fact that he can still fit in the hero power means that in some worlds one of the two minions survives. He's going to commit the Spirit Jailer as well.
I was wondering whether he was going to save the Spirit Jailer, because it's 0 mana. You can guarantee a setup with either Lapidary, Shard Chatter, Militia as well. You can just guarantee that setup that's going to be at least decent. Just go get that extra minion on board. Look at this. This is just everything a priest wants in life. Card draw, the board built, board taken over control of. It's just perfect.
Insane development, but this does give Taesang a pretty clean Shard Shatter Mystic, even 2 of them if he wants. With the 2/2 trading in the Murazond, and I think that would be the full clear.
I was wondering whether he can get away... Well, okay, he can get away with only using 1 if he puts the 2/2 into the 4/2. Right. And then he could do it once, put another 1 in. It would probably be too messy, wouldn't it? He would need to use Twin Slices or Blade Dance, and that might be too much of an overcommitment versus an additional 3/2.
Well, I was about to agree with you, but looks like Taesang is looking for some alternate game plans. Sorry, I forgot that the minion in the Karj was that
large.
Big, so yeah. Looks like he will have to commit some additional damage if he wants to clear the board entirely.
I guess he could go... Oh, right, yeah. He can trade, use 1 Twin Slice, and then Blade Dance, right? And then still have a Shard Chatter.
Yep.
Or still play a Shard Chatter.
Pretty clean. I was just wondering whether another Shard Shatter plus the health on your face is more valuable than a Blade Dance. It might be getting to the point where Taesang is just saying that he just wants to commit as much weapon damage to the face every single turn, so he's willing to throw out a big resource like Blade Dance for that reason, and I think that's very reasonable.
Yeah, at this point in the game, I think Taesang's just said, okay, my opponent's got 1 million cards in hand. This is a problem. I just need to go and hope I have enough damage.
Oh, such premium resources for High 3. He doesn't currently have an Apotheosis in hand, so that could be nice to just have as a fallback, but it's not guaranteed to connect necessarily because he hasn't stuck an attacking minion on board this turn. It is definitely going to be the Sticky Finger here, and that is a heartbreaker for Taesang because he is running out of damage.
Yeah, I really like the Apotheosis, though, because he has Pyro, right? So he's got 1 maker to generate an additional spell. He's got Wave of Apathy as well if he really needs it. So he can go Pyro into Apotheosis and so on to get that re-heal Reno effect. Even if there's not much for board on Taesang's side, you can still heal for a significant margin.
Because Taesang is currently sitting on 13, I believe, this turn, if he uses 3 Twin Slices, Chaos Strike, and the Lapidary, which is not enough. I think this is going to be a board clear turn. He can go kind of half and half with like Shard Shatter, Hero Power, the Kobold, and then...
Okay.
Okay. Wow.
Sorry,
Never mind.
That's just more slice. That's not twin slice anymore. We're looking at like getting towards quad slice.
Yep. Just waiting for Octoslice at some point.
That is just a ton of damage, and at this point, when you have this kind of hand as Demon Hunter, all overall strategy does just go flying out the window, and you just go face because you have so much damage every turn.
Yeah, that is true. He's just hoping that High 3 doesn't have the big healing potential. Even a single Apotheosis, maybe Taesang could get through that, but if it's Pyro plus Apotheosis, that is the real backbreaker. Looking back on it, the line I was suggesting of going for Shard Shadow Hero Power is quite bad because he couldn't really develop the Lapidary afterward and get the damage through to face because he would have to Hero Power down the Sticky Finger. For High 3, I think this is absolutely a Pyro turn.
Does he feel safe enough to try and steal instead? Is that what he's going to aim at? Like trade steal the 5/5? I don't think it's needed. And he's not going to use the Pyro, huh?
Oh, that's super interesting here. It is a lot of healing, and he has seen, I think, both the Blade Dances by this point, so this does give him a close counter-lethal setup across a couple turns, and he just feels confident in being able to not die by that point. It's a bit scary, but
this is
we do know
maximum.
that the additional generated Twin Slice is there.
Yeah, this is maximum confidence. Even healing the little bit of damage that was on the Sticky Finger without Apotheosis. And this is just so different to what we've been seeing, at least in the European Grandmasters, where a lot of players are very focused on going for that Pyromancer Apotheosis combos. Because High 3 would be on almost full health at this point if he made that turn. And although this is still a strong turn with the steal, his actual health is only on 17, and that is not a lot.
If he had one more mana to be able to fit in the Shard Shatter this turn, then he could have gotten rid of the Sticky Finger without having to face tank it or without letting it connect face for another turn. Such a big deal. He's also fishing for the Consume magic in his list and didn't get it. Now he has to commit the Glaive Bound into it. Not a complete disaster, but that does limit some of his burst potential for the next turn.
Yeah, the biggest problem as well is this Lapidary is now just, boom, there we go, back up to a 5/5, which just insta-kills the Glaive Bound if High 3 so wants it to, of course. So this Glaive Bound has 0% chance of staying alive.
It certainly feels like an opportunity to get down the Evasive Draconid here. In prime position to help close out the game in the near future, and really tough for Taesang to interact with.
Yeah, even gets to whip in a heal there. Keep hold of that Renew in hand. Everything's looking pretty good. High 3 even is just sitting on the Soul Mirror in case the Militia comes down, which is, again, the one thing that without Soul Mirror can really cause you some issues. As the priest, he's just sat on the Soul Mirror too. So looking very, very good for High 3. But Taesang does have Kane now, but is that going to be enough? I think he might have just a little bit too much health to get through here.
Yeah, it's short, right? There's what is this? 10 damage from the slices plus Kane plus Hero Power. It's 14, and that means that if Kane is coming down and not immediately dealing lethal, you can pretty much kiss it goodbye, and the taunt becomes a problem the very next turn as well.
Yeah, very simply, if in the situation you can't lethal your opponent, then you pretty much have to just kill the taunt instead, right? Because it's going to be the same issue. He just has to kill it, right?
So that means we could just see 2 slices committed into the Evasive Draconid, no matter how painful it is for Taesang. He just doesn't have a win condition otherwise.
Yep, there you go. Is he going to double trade? I imagine he pushed the 3 with the Cane. Okay, yep.
And High 3 has Renew to heal back up. Gonna start with the Spellkin instantly.
Double Renew. Seems pretty good.
Wow, it's not even going on his own face. He is hyper aware of Taesang's damage breakpoints. might just take a mind vision to have more knowledge of that last one card that he doesn't know about in Taesang's hand. He's aware of the other second slice.
Yeah, I'm just going to bank the heal as well, going up to 21. He's seen so much damage from Taesang. He just knows he can't expect to see so much more, but it does worry me, honestly. Even though High 3 looks to be quite confident with his health, all I see is that his health could have been so much higher if he just did a Pyromancer turn at some point in this game. Because 21 still is not exactly safe. Obviously, we can see right now there's a good chunk of damage from Taesang, and it's probably going to be enough this game. And maybe that is just High 3 being a god and just saying, no, I'm fine, I'm safe. But it does just make me nervous watching the Priest hand use up a Apotheosis without going off with the Pyro.
No, I think that's a very fair point. There were certain combinations of cards from Taesang that could have gotten rid of the minion that he did end up putting the Apotheosis on without having to commit additional damage into it, say some Shard Shatter turn. It didn't end up happening, which was a huge deal for High 3 because it essentially got to double heal by having that first Apotheosis attack plus eating up the 4 damage from the Glaive Bound. But I have to admit, I would have gone for Pyro in that situation as well. What I will say is that these last few turns from High 3 were super clean. He is completely aware of how much healing he had to put on his face, and he realized that the Lapidary, if he had healed it with Renew and it stuck on board, it was likely to eat up more damage because he was just threatening counter-lethal instead.
And there's the knowledge. Now High 3 can quite confidently play around with his health because he knows exactly what at least one card is.
And he can just kill Taesang. I was a bit worried he was going for the Cobalt into the Spirit Jailer, but he sees it in the end, and that is going to be the series to High 3. Very, very clean. We didn't get to see how the beginning panned out, but I do think that his more confident and aggressive style of playing Priest is a style that has room to be explored for sure.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it scares me because I'm not used to it, and we've seen players go from trying to stick minions and pushing Apotheosis minions to saving up for some more refill with Pyromancer as just a more common strategy. Not to say the other one doesn't work, but I will say the 2 sticky fingers in that game versus what could have just been a 1 did help out quite a lot there. But he does take the win, but we do have some more matches or games for you coming right up. I do believe, just going to triple check, we are going to check out Frenetic versus Kylan's here. And RNG, Kylan, should I say RNG being his team, of course. Highlander Priest, Galakrond Rogue, and Tempo Mage. And wait a minute. Can I get an official check? I believe TJ did these key cards. Gia, am I seeing the amazing Reno in Tempo Mage?
I am seeing that as well. I need to double check the list because I can hardly believe my eyes, but that is one way to react to the nerfs, just adding even more randomness over at the top there.
Yeah, the best thing, I'm looking at the list, it's literally Tempo Mage with an amazing Reno just thrown in. The list is the 1 Conjurers, 1 Arcane Intellect usual. There's no Devolving Missiles, and I guess that's the cut for Reno. Okay, well, we'll see how that one works out for him. Whereas Frenetic, a player who is in the mix for the European Grandmasters, has a bit more of a standard lineup with maybe not too many surprises here. And we are going to go in what appears to be the final game, number 5. Both players at 2-2. Mage on the top, Priest on the bottom.
Oh, I love it. We're going to get to see the Tempo Mage, and I hope we get to see the amazing Reno come out because at first glance it seems pretty counterintuitive to what Mage is trying to do, which is, end the game before they even get into a position where they need to go for a big board wipe. And you tend to think that Mage would just leverage all of their small spells put together in one turn to be the big poof turn and also generate all their spells that way. But it does add kind of a wild card factor for these longer and more drawn out matchups like versus Priest.
Yeah, and if there's ever going to be a player that's going to chuck that Reno in a Tempo Mage list, it's going to be one who's on a team called RNG, I guess. So we'll have to see how that one pans out for him. Both players are 1-0 so far, so they got off to at least a decent start. But again, all coming down to this game. Kylan's off to a good start with his opening hand as well. Very cheap and a lot of generation in there for that Cyclone a little bit later on.
Right, and I do like that he goes for Wand Maker instead of, say, just pinging the Cleric of Scales on the other side, because he's very aware that Priest will generally curve out with a couple more minions once to get that board presence going, and immediately trading off the Spell Wings is always great because he has the Cyclone in hand and wants to get the guaranteed missiles before any stealing shenanigans can go on.
Really good from Frenetic, though, to get this Twilight Drake down, because Mage likes having targets to aim spells at, such as Ray of Frost, of course. But, you know, a 4-6 this early in the game, it's going to soak a lot of spells. So Twilight Drake going to be on some weight here, I think, in this matchup for now.
It's true. If RNG Killen really wanted to, he could use Arcane Breath and Razor Frost to get rid of it, but I'm kind of interested in what his long-term game plan will be, or at least the next 2 to 3 turns planned out, because he has this Elemental allies and 2 Elementals in hand to help him cycle. So I do very much like that he is getting at least one of them online this turn, going for a small Cyclone, which is still going to leave him with the hand space to draw the spells with the second Elemental played next turn.
Wow.
Being generated.
Multiple players now not running a standard devolving missiles, and we can see why. They just generate them when needed. Instead, it's absolutely huge. Like, look at the difference Kylan's has now with that. You can just trade devolving missiles, or, you know, maybe use the Ray of Frost or whatever to deal with the 2-2. Get the devolving missiles to aim at the Twilight Drake. Absolutely huge.
Yeah, it's super clean. Gets to free up some hand space for the Violet Spellwing. I think he might have to end up throwing an Arcane Missiles just to make sure he doesn't overdraw if the Spellwing dies. But I don't think that's a big problem in the grand scheme of things. He is keeping the cycle going and getting closer to the Apprentices and also closer to the Amazing Reno.
I've got a funny feeling we're going to see it. I don't know why, but I think it was just meant to be.
I have the exact same feeling, Raven. Let's see if we're going to be psychic. Big deal that he picks up the Primordial Studies to go along with these cram sessions in hand. There's a Solarian available.
Yeah, Solarian, you do always have to pause just for a second to work out if you want to pick Solarian against Priest, specifically, because their little annoying habit of stealing your own stuff and getting them for themselves. But I do still think almost all the time it's the correct pick, because the card is just too good all the times it doesn't get stolen. And also you can try and kill it yourself, right?
Yeah, it's also just the cheapest way for him to get the cram sessions online. I expect that he'll take a turn to maybe empty some cards before that. But he generally just wants to cycle towards those mana giants, towards, say, Shanvala with Apprentice to really start popping off and give the first real board of threats that Frenetic is required to deal with.
Yeah, Kylan has almost this strange problem of too many cards in his hand and not really great ways to get them out fast enough here, which is a nice problem to have, of course, as Mage, but it does lead to some tricky choices. What is the plan here, Gia? There's a ton of card drawing generation, but also a 3/5 staring down at him.
Yeah, it's very true. I'm thinking about just playing out a Combustion with maybe the Solarian here. Looks like he is trying to make some room for one cram session, which he can do with the Arcane Missiles, but he won't necessarily have a way to end up with 9 cards after that. Okay, I didn't expect this. Playing out the Solarian but not using the cram session definitely feels like it strands the cram sessions a little bit. I was thinking of maybe just a Combustion and double Ray of Frost turn even.
And then also, just for me, it probably doesn't matter in the realistic outcomes, but the ping and then magic trick to see what he got was very interesting as well there.
For sure. It seemed like he was quite indecisive there. And in the grand scheme of things, the big punish you were talking about of Solarian getting stolen does come to fruition. Killen immediately picks up his second one, but I do think this is still going to be a Combustion turn. You can use it with the Solarian for a nice clean clear.
Yeah, right now, no real way to transform now that Solarian to make it not Shuffle a Prime into Frenetic's list, so I do like this though. Just keep it simple. Use the power of the Combustion there to clear the board. Get the Solarian down yourself, and move on from there.
Whoa. talking about too many resources and too many things to do. It might be that Keelan is quite comfortable with the amount of card draw that he already had, that he's willing to throw out these Solarians and just maybe cram session for one. I'm not necessarily in agreement with that, but I can see where he's coming from.
Yeah, I mean, Frenetic not really short of cards either, and we see a relatively slow turn there from him, but doesn't have too much to do regardless. Jandis is a nice pickup for Kylan now. Not necessarily even if he has to play it this turn, but just a simple player card. It doesn't replace itself in your hand. I think is going to be almost a weird relief for Kylan to be able to play at some point in this game.
It says something about the quality of the mage hand that you can treat Jandis as a dump cards play and be happy with it.
Yeah, we're definitely playing a strange game right now.
Yeah. It's going to end up with the Rays of Frost here to try and make more room instead of Jandis. I think he completely expects that the Jandis would be immediately removed, so he's trying to make the bigger power plays of setting up for a big Shanvala turn, possibly with the evocation, but he's very much still waiting for his apprentice.
And now we're looking at some kind of weird tavern brawl where it's just one makers.
Tavern Brawl? I'm seeing Battlegrounds. That's a triple.
Oh, it's already gold, so it doesn't count. It's insane, though. And the counterspell, again, normally you can set up decent counterspells, but Kylan, even without seeing the one makers, had to expect this counterspell was 3 mana, make your opponent burn a 1-cost card, because the priest generates so many of them. I think it was, again, just more about Kylan's dumping cards from his hand than trying to get any real value from it.
No, I think that's very reasonable. Jandis gonna come out now. Ideally, Kylan would love to have a Raz here. Oh no!
Close.
What are those?
It's genius, right? It stops the priest wanting to steal your cards if they're bad.
Yeah, not gonna respond to that one. It's a big deal that he does pick up the Mana Giant, though Kylan is running one natural copy of Conjurer's Calling in the list, and given that his Jandis was a gigantic whiff, he certainly needs to be putting down some other type of threat now that Frenetic is hitting these mana breakpoints where he can start threatening all the additional dragons that he's generated.
Yeah,
off the top.
In this day, obviously everything's a little bit different when you include Reno in your deck for Kylan and the mage, of course, but Frenetic's survived what is sometimes the onslaught from the early game mage, and now he's managed to gain board, at least for now, outside of that Conjurer's turn, of course. So, although he looked secure, things are already looking a little bit more dicey, Gia, as Conjurer's Calling into those two, then a generated Yogg-Box as well.
Yeah,
again,
sorry,
a bit
there
of a
were just
taster
too
from what the
many insane
expansion's going to look
things.
like. Yeah.
Yeah, he just spun the wheel already, and he hit the 0%er of just playing the previous meta. But the Katrina reses the obelisk.
If he reses 2 more, we're in business. Is it 3 you need? I think it's 3, right?
I think so. I've never played the card in my life. But if we're gonna find out in any real competitive series of Hearthstone, it's gotta be this one, right? Katrina does look very dead here, but we can dream. Maybe it happens on Frenetic's side.
Yeah, exactly. Now the 0-5 dies for him, and then he summons it with his. I don't know. He casts like 20 raised
Mass
deaths and
res?
eventually gets it.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
In the end, just taking the Thought Steal because there's still a Prime in there, and it's just more and more resources for Frenetic.
Yeah, this obelisk will be at least a little bit annoying because Frenetic knows there's a Conjurer's in hand. So Kylan can make use of... Oh, here we go. Never mind.
Right on
Reno.
time, of course. The second I question the inclusion in this list, the Reno is top deck for the perfect board state for Keelan to come back.
It says explode.
It's Hearthstone 2021 right now. Reno, Solarian Prime's coming down. It might be responded to with a box.
I'm actually a bit surprised that that was an insta-play from Frenetic. He has been taking very, very quick turns, but I feel like against nothing on the other side, there's a lot of bad outcomes here, and he actually overdraws his Murazond off of that. That was a terrible Prime.
It was. Yeah. The problem with, if you look at the rest of his hand outside of Thought Steal was pointless that turn, right?
That's
It would have been
true.
what, Pyromancer, heal, pass, which does nothing. So I do understand him playing it. It's just a little bit unfortunate that it was into that empty board. It's not really achieved too much, except put a 9-10 on the board. Like, you know, would you burn a Morazon to get a 9-10 lifesteal on an empty board? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, obviously he didn't know he was going to burn cards, so
Right.
given the quality of the rest of his hand was not doing very much, you gotta forgive him for the play. I was certainly still looking at just Lab Partner, Thoughtsteal, and maybe play a couple of the mage things you get, but I think I can't fault Frenetic for trying to close out the game before Keelan can generate too many crazy things with the Reno or the Prime that's still in the deck.
My hand is too full.
Cabal being burnt there, not the biggest deal, although it would have been nice to combo this turn with Wave, potentially as well, because there is that Holy Smite to back it up with, to reduce down some of the board too. Looks
Given
like
that he
it's
has
going to be
so
a really
many cheap
tough game
spells,
for
I
Fnatic.
imagine a Pyro Clear should be very easy to accomplish here. Doesn't even need to commit Apotheosis necessarily because he's quite healthy still. Could just use Holy Smite and Ray of Frost, heal the Pyro somewhere in between. Picks up Mana Giant from the Thoughtsteal.
Yeah, if anything, I'm wondering whether Apotheosis would be good. Well, this is pre-Mana Giant generation, but even on the Prime, because we did see Fnatic did see Cannons like trying to kill the Prime and couldn't that turn because he generated his board, of course. So maybe just making that Prime a little bit more awkward would be pretty good.
Yeah, I could see that. Bit scary because there's always more freeze that can come down on the other side. I think the deviation from Fnatic, I think before he saw what the Thoughtsteal gave, he was looking at a full clear with the Pyro turn, but instead settled for, oh my god, that's an insane Reno. Settled for just clearing the Shenvala in order to fit in the Giant plus Ray of Frost.
And that's clearly why I didn't go for the Apotheosis there. He knew that Polymorph was getting thrown his way. And they're going to hit the perfect target. Wow. That is a lot of cheap spells.
Yeah. Deep Freeze is the one
Yeah,
I'm
just-
looking at. So much extra board presence.
He can just deep freeze the Mana Giant and go.
Yeah, it looks like he doesn't even want to draw cards because he's doing this before he's frozen anything with Deep Freeze.
Well, yeah, and I think rightly so. The problem is he's only got 6 cards left, and he has a Yogg box and Reno live. Those two things can draw cards. He doesn't want to throw this game away through sort of randomly generated fatigue.
And because of the fact that he was running out of resources, he deviates from the Deep Freeze, plays everything else instead, and tries to get the most out of his Mana Cyclone. You can definitely support the reasoning for it, and he ends up with another Yogg box for his troubles. Okay, Fnatic gonna start with Inner Fire to test for both Bender and Counterspell. Now he's free to go for Apotheosis if he wants. Then again, he's not even healing for that much, so yeah, just renew.
Yeah, the big question about Apotheosis, if you're not getting the heal, is can you make the Pyromancer live long enough for it to actually clear a big board? And in this case, yes. So then he doesn't have to cast it, right? Sometimes you actually need the extra health on the Pyromancer to make it work.
Yep.
Let's get Alex Straza as well. Not a horrible pickup. These kind of late-stage games, any sort of big bomb threats, as well, the fact that Kylan's is on full health, more or less, means that Alex is going to get some good work done. And what was
Certainly,
that?
I think you can see, based on Fnatic picking Mind Control and Alexstrasza and holding the Apotheosis, that he doesn't see this as just clear every board type of gameplay. He's also going for value, because he knows that Kylan is not likely to burst down, but he could have any number of additional value spells generated.
Oh,
Oh, Alakir!
oh, the secret. Okay, yeah, it was Flame Ward, yeah.
Kylan can even just end on Raz if he so chooses.
And pick up a goose.
It's a bit scary because of another wide board clear. Then he doesn't necessarily have the best follow-up for the next turn. But having picked up Malagos, Yeah, I
Yeah,
do
I
like
like
just
it,
playing the
yeah.
Raz, and if this board gets dealt with, you just drop the Goose.
And if it doesn't get dealt with and Raz lives, you definitely drop the Goose, because that is a ton of damage. And worst case, let's be honest, you play one of your boxes. It's fine.
And it does very much look like
This
the
Goose.
Raz is going to stick, and we're going to see the dream, the very rare Malagos plus Raz.
And his Reno just cast Never Surrender as well, which is a huge deal, making this board even stickier. Oh,
Yeah,
is this
that's
just lethal,
insane.
Gia? It's close.
It's very close. It's one
times.
turn off. That's what I'll say.
There's Never
And-
Surrender.
Looking for the Cabal Acolyte to steal the Malagos. He gets it. Do you even want to steal Malagos or Raz? I don't even know.
I think he needs to
Can
steal
he fit
Amazing
in?
Reno.
Yes, with the armor and the health on it.
Exactly. It doesn't work like that by any means, in any way at all. That's what he needs. Does have Ice Barrier. If you can get that off as well.
Going to go for a Pyro Apo wave turn. Unfortunately, there's no way to deal with the lab partner with all of the
Right.
extra health tacked on. So he's just gonna hope that he steals one of the good ones. Oh, wait, he didn't wave first?
Renette?
Yeah, that didn't look right.
And I think that's what the pause is for.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
going about it in this order means that he
Yeah.
does get one more set of healing from the Apo, but I certainly think he would have rather stolen a minion than had a little bit of extra health there.
I think he would rather have not potentially thrown the game than have a little bit of extra health there, yeah. Because with this Malagos, it doesn't matter if these minions have one attack, right? The spell damage is still there. It's still going to be a huge, huge problem. And now, Frenetic has even less resources to try and make this work with.
Not the greatest spells. I certainly wouldn't hate him just ripping Evocation to try and find lethal right now. A single fireball would, I think, seal the game.
Oh, he missed.
Yeah. Not the greatest generations, but it's okay. The last board wasn't dealt with cleanly, so he's very likely to just get this board to do the same.
Okay, well,
Searching
starting with
for
the new.
Soul Mirror, does that do anything?
Well, Shadowwood Ruin definitely doesn't. Shadow Madness can potentially steal the Raz.
Right. Can it die immediately by trading into Malagos? I can't remember how much health it had on it. It seems like that's the only
504, right?
hope.
Because didn't the Pyro do cast 2?
And so if that's a way to clear Raz, I think that is absolutely the pick. I think Kylan has demonstrated
Oh
that
no,
he
Never
has
Surrender.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Never mind.
Okay.
I forgot about Never Surrender.
And so because of that, he takes the Ruin to try and deal with at least 2 of the threats here. Renetic surviving another day. And is it time for Kylan to rip a box? Probably not. I think it's just deep freeze this turn and keep going.
Spellbook's running late. I'm out of cards.
But his spellbook
last
is
card's
running
prime,
light,
though, right?
Raven.
Oh. Oh, look at this hand. 2 Yogg boxes and a Prime.
Okay, good job, Kylan. He is just going for consistent board development. He realized Frenetic has been struggling every single turn to deal with this, not taking any additional chances. The barrier will
The barrier
help Frenetic live to see another day.
That's the problem, right? The barrier keeps him alive for what? Realistically, 1 additional turn, but for what? Like, what's that one draw? He has 6 cards left. There's not really, I think, a draw that can get him there.
Yeah, I don't think so. He already used the Prime that he stole. And so it feels like Frenetic has slim to no outs. Kylan, I think, can happily just Blizzard or Ray of Frost these and keep going.
This is a Prime Lethal, if I ever saw one.
Oh my god, okay. Yeah, Oli is very unlikely to actually have this go wrong. I think it would have to actually cast a box for Kylan to end up losing here. Or just 5 arcane intellects, but that's highly unlikely.
Yeah, with 2 enemy targets on board, you're feeling quite confident. And also, there is the extra spell damage as well from the Prime for Raz. Okay.
Okay, Lazul into Blizzard.
I was thinking it's more going to have to be Lazul into a magical box that's playable, but yeah, Blizzard is going to have to be the play. But again, there's the counterspell. And that is going to be the game, that is going to be the series, and Kylan takes it with his... Oh yeah, just waiting for the whatever the spell could be cast, I guess. But Kylan takes it with the amazing Reno in his Tempo Mage. I am shocked. I don't know if I can recover from this one.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it came at the exact perfect moment where Frenetic had finally taken the board and he was poised to just win the game off of his minions sticking turn after turn, but that top deck completely saved Kylan there. And just the fact that he ended the game with 2 puzzle boxes in hand makes me feel like he's already saving up for Dark Moon Fair.
Yeah, he's just pretty ready, I think, after that game. But congratulations to him. I am very interested